Hey, you guys, welcome to Burgundy Blue Commentary, where today we're talking about what we want to talk about when we're ready to talk about it. And today we want to talk about District 148. And I have an amazing guest with me today. Sorry. I have an amazing guest with me today, Gardis Watts. How you doing, Gardis?
Hey, Berg. Hey, family.
We're glad to have you on this discussion to talk about District 148, correct? Am I saying, because I always get 148 and 149 confused, but I think 148 is Riverdale.
Yeah, 148 is Riverdale and West Dalton.
Riverdale and West Dalton.
Mhm.
And then the other is Calumet City and Dalton, I think. Something
Yes,
like that.
that's
Okay,
that's, one-
great.
that's 149.
Perfect. Well, I'm glad to have you have some experience with District 148. So I'm so glad we have you here because I noticed that Regina Waldrop, our um, resident turned educated resident newscaster are that's out here, she did another part on the former superintendent of District 148, which is Dr. Kevin Nolte. We covered a little bit of this earlier this year, and it was when he was going back and forth. I'm saying he was going back and forth, I don't know, but it seems like I might have it wrong. Two superintendents were fighting. um that's when I saw Jesse Jackson support another doctor higher up in academia, I guess.
Are you talking about the
Dr.
deputy?
Whitaker.
Yeah,
Was
Dr. Sonia Whitaker. She's the deputy superintendent.
Okay, deputy superintendent. So it was a
Mhm.
little rift there, and then all of a sudden, Tiffany Henyard, who was our mayor in Dalton, she came out and about, and after, I'm gonna say, this is my words. It seemed like after everyone came out with the tiki torches for Tiffany to get her out, they ran over to District 148 out of nowhere. And I found that weird because as we could see, the Lansing Journal actually did, hey Tracy, they did an article back in March, and it was this huge thing where they were going to raise a new contract and a raise for a superintendent already making an annual base salary of $450,000. Okay, and people were really mad about that. But a lot of people, besides the Lansing Journal, um, would argue thinking that Dr. Nolte was making $450,000 as just a superintendent, when that's not true. He had more than one job, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct.
So it was the combined jobs that made him get to that amount, and he's been working it for quite a while, and no one had a complaint then. This is my words, you guys, not Gardis's. This is me. I thought that this man came out of nowhere and started making $450,000 overnight, but he had been around quite a while. I want to say over 7 years.
Yes.
And the room, this is the Lansing Journal's coverage. The room was filled with people opposed to Dr. Nolte making $450,000 a year and a new contract, and the board did what? Approved it anyway.
Yes, they did.
It's very interesting. So I want to play a little bit of Regina's story, and then we could take it from there if that's okay.
Yep.
All right, let's go.
So what brought me back to Dolton? So right after we finished everything dealing with former Mayor Tiffany Henyard, I started getting a lot of emails about the superintendent. I just didn't have the time to dig right into it, but our investigative department, they did. And boy, what did they find? Wait till you hear this. Up not too far from there in South Suburban Harvey. So people know me. They know that I love this community. Even when I wasn't working, I was in Dolton. And so I have a relationship with the people there, and they know if something happens, if there's an issue, that I am the person to contact. And so they do that. They reach out to me, whether it be when I'm working or even not working, because I will respond. And this was a big one.
My name is Dr. Kevin J. Nolte, Superintendent of Schools.
So Kevin Nolte was making more than $500,000 a year in salary and benefits. So to put that in context, That is more than President Trump makes. That is more than Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson makes. And that is more than what public university presidents in the state of Illinois make.
So I want to pause that there. Now, Gardis, feel free not to answer. This is just me asking. Is that a stretch to say like the superintendent of schools is making more than the president or no, in your opinion?
Well,
Mm-hmm.
well,
No.
I mean, the president, I think, makes what, $200,000 or $300,000 a year, just off his salary. But obviously with Donald Trump being a billionaire, it really doesn't matter to him. But I think that's the average salary of a president now. But I mean, in some ways it is a stretch. In some ways it's not, because when you think of the president, you don't think about a person who has a lot of money, but he's the head of the most powerfulest country in the world. So that comes with its own kind of like benefits, and not with like money or monetary rewards.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Now I did a simple Google search. I don't know if this is what it is all the way. This was a simple one, and because I agree with the 300, but they're saying now because it's Trump, he's making $400,000 a year.
Okay, okay, all right, 400,000. Okay,
and then he gets 50,000 for expenses, 100,000 for travel, and 19,000 for entertainment. he is the entertainment. Goodness.
Yeah, he is.
Okay, let's go back. Now that's interesting. Okay, I love to hear your perspective on that. I was just wondering, and I wonder if Regina going to say this is more than one position, but we'll see.
So Kevin J. Nolte was the superintendent in School District 148 that covers Dolton and Riverdale. But before that, he kind of been floating around to other districts. He was in Lincolnwood serving as superintendent. And then after that, he went to Harvey serving as superintendent, and then found his way to District 148, and that covers Dolton and Riverdale.
Now, NBC5 investigates a local public school superintendent who's made more than $500,000 a year paid by the taxpayers of South Suburban Dolton and Riverdale.
Why is this a big deal? A couple of things. Well, he is in charge, or was in charge, of 10 schools. I understand. Yeah, that is a big charge. That's a big responsibility. But in this school district, the average income, $50,000. $50,000. And there's no tax base in South Suburban Dolton or Riverdale. So these residents face high property taxes, but they also are paying a lot for these schools and paying a lot for the superintendent. But in the end, what did they get?
$500,000. This district is on financial watch with the state. I don't know if you all knew that.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Financial watch. Why are we considering such an amount?
We have been asking that same question. That is a big deal for parents. That's what they were asking us. What did they get? And they would come to the school board meetings asking that same question, because as his salary and benefits were increasing, the school district was declining when it came to the financial profile. And now this school district, the only one in the state of Illinois on the Board of Education's watch list. Who funds his salary?
Now that's terrible. I just can't believe that. Like, I say I don't think if I was in Dr. Nolte's shoes, I would even want to raise when the district is doing so terrible. That's my opinion on it. I would rather raise it and raise the test scores or get that together. Spend that, because that all comes from, I don't know if that comes from the same pot, but spend that money to hire more teachers just in case the classroom is overcrowded. But I don't think I will be rushing to accept a raise right now.
The taxpayers, the people who live in Dolton and Riverdale, that's who fund his salary. So once the tips start coming in and the parents start contacting us, we started doing some digging, and that's when we learned that he also has issues in other districts that he's worked in. But again, he denies any wrongdoing and says when it comes to District 148 that these are a lot of baseless accusations made by many of the school board members. And he also brings up the issue that he is white and many of the board members, or all of the board members, are African American. But
wait a minute, what did that mean? I don't get. He brought that up that he's white. I mean, did he bring that up or other people brought that up?
No, he brought that up.
Okay, because I don't understand what that means. It seems like it would mean more to the community. I don't know.
Well,
Like,
he's claiming racial discrimination because of the fact that the board majority is black. No, I wouldn't say majority, all black. Every board member is black.
Oh, and the school district is black. I mean, not the school district. The school is, I'm sure, what, 99% black, something like that.
Probably like 90, about 97 with some Hispanic and Latino students.
Okay, so he's claiming discrimination. So I don't know, because that makes me a little confused because the board voted. I'm sorry, Garden.
No, and you're right, but if I don't know if you want to continue with the video, because I can explain everything when you.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
Board in this instance voted to hire him. Sometimes superintendents are appointed, but in this instance, it was the school board that voted to hire Kevin J. Nolte. Being a superintendent is a big job. But if there were so many red flags, then why did the school board approve him? Why did they appoint him? And that is the question we're still asking, waiting for answers. And that's also the question that residents in this community are asking, and that came to the school board meetings asking that same question. Regarding how a superintendent is hired, sometimes they can be voted in by residents, but many times they are appointed by a school board, which is the case here. The school board members vote to appoint. Well, before they appoint someone, they set out a search. They want a specific person. They may have a search committee to find the perfect fit for this district. And apparently that happened here. And Kevin J. Nolte was who they came up with. So as we're working, doing a deep dive into this story about the highest paid superintendent in the state of Illinois, we've been asking the questions of the school board, of Kevin J. Nolte. We're not getting any response. So our story airs on the 10 o'clock news. The next day, the very next day, we get an email and call from Kevin J. Nolte's attorney. And he submits a letter to us letting us know that Kevin J. Nolte is retiring from his position in School District 148. He said he was leaving the school district in a good place. How can it be in a good place if it's on the state's financial watch list? In his letter, Kevin J. Nolte says he's leaving the district in a good place, making it appear as if things are good for the district, but that's not what parents are saying. That's not what teachers are saying. That's not what even therapists are saying. I've had so many people reach out to me about this school district and what has happened under him. So how is it in a good place? But he also says he's retiring also, he says, because it has a lot to do with the board and accusations, baseless accusations that board members were making against him. So now that the highest paid superintendent in the state is no longer there, in School District 148, a few weeks ago, the school board appointed an interim superintendent until they can do a search to find a permanent fit for that school district. The story does not end here. I've been contacted by so many people who know Mr. Nolte from other districts who say that they have more information for me. We're working on that, but also it's expected that pretty soon he'll be applying for his pension, and we're going to use a Freedom of Information request to find out how much that is, because not only did the district pay, but the state's going to keep on paying this man who was the highest paid superintendent in the state of Illinois. So he was the highest paid superintendent in the state of Illinois. But I don't think there was a lot of reporting on that. And that's several reasons. A lot of these school board meetings are not covered. They're not covered by TV. They're not covered by radio. They're not covered by print. And that's a problem because the news industry is shrinking. And so people, stations, entities, they don't have the bodies to put at these school board meetings, at these city council meetings, at these village board meetings. So what happened in this school district also happened in Dolton because there's nobody there watching. There are no eyes. The watchdog is not there. So are there other districts like this one where the superintendent is making $500,000 in salary and benefits? I'm going to tell you yes, because I've been contacted again by other people, other taxpayers who are raising the red flag and say, hey, this is happening in my district too. So I'm going to start FOIAing those records as well. And we're going to get to those stories. We're going to tackle those stories as well and bring some light to these issues. But the bigger story is here. Go to your school board meetings. Go to your school board meetings. I'm guilty.
Gardis has been telling us this for how many years? Go to the meetings. Go to the meetings.
Of that. I don't go to mine. You know, during COVID, I was tuning in, listening in, you know, being there. Go to your school board meetings and try to prevent things like this from happening. That's the only way. Be present in your community. Otherwise, you never know what's happening. You know, I embedded myself in this community. I just didn't send a producer there. I didn't go there once a week. I was there throughout the week on weekends. I was a part of this community. I am a part of this community. I grew up in the South suburbs. People know me. They know I respond. They know I care about the suburbs because it means so close to my heart. And they know that I will answer those calls. I'll respond to those emails. And that's how this story came about. If there's a story in your community in the South suburbs that you think we need to look at, I can't promise you that it.
I already know what she's about to say. Don't. Hey, y'all. So nothing else is happening in the South suburbs. Okay, it wasn't a fight up in Harvey where she. Okay, all right. I'm sorry. Keep on going, Regina.
We'll go on air, but I can promise you that I'll give you a call back and I'll start some digging, and I'll open a conversation. I'll try to get you some answers. Thanks for watching The Story Behind the Story. And if you have a story idea similar to.
Go on, Regina. Go on, girl. Okay. So Regina said, I don't know, but if you got a story. So, okay, I'll let you take the floor, Gardis. What do you think about this?
I think Regina she's not telling the complete story. And I'm not saying that I'm exonerating Dr. Nolte for his part in this whole situation, because you know how when people tell the truth, you know, they kind of leave out some details. So I can tell you that I'm a millionaire, right? But if I never tell you how I became a millionaire, then people would just look at it and say, well, Gardis is a millionaire. We don't know how he got his money. Gardis selling drugs? Did he invent a product, or did he just rob a bank? You know, those things are many ways that certain people can be a millionaire in this world right now. So I think her story, for one, lacks lacks historical background for what the district is going through. I know a lot of it focused on Dr. Nolte. And I remember, you know, you had just said, why would he take a raise, you know, when the district is in bad shape? Well, let me try to give you the story from my perspective. So, as you know, and as most of your audience members know, I have been an employee at 148 for 9 years. I went there from 2015 and left in 2018. Came back in late 2019 because, you know, I did that stint with Thornton Township. And then from 2019 all the way up until August of 2025, which I resigned on good terms. So if somebody wants to spread the rumor that Gardis was forced out of his position at 148. It's not true. I left on my own. I actually hadn't, because what was so funny is Dr. Nolte ended up retiring like a week after I retired, and everybody was asking me, did you know that? I was like, I had no idea. Had no idea at all. He didn't give me any indications that he was retiring or anything. So the position that I had at 148 was I was what it was called a systems information specialist. So I was the person who was the person that spearheaded a lot of the technology in the district. I also serviced a lot of the technology and implemented systems in the district. I over my 9-year span, I helped redesign the website. I basically implemented several applications that the district uses now, which includes Clever, which is a student portal application that makes managing applications and installing applications very easy on the Chromebooks. I've also implemented Power School and done several things on what they call the backend infrastructure. So I help the district get up-to-date servers, also upgrade their internet to 2 gigabytes, which is a lot compared to some of the other school districts in the area. So, I did. I basically did a lot of work as far as technology wise. So I basically kind of have a pretty good view of how we got here in 148. So when I stepped into 148 in 2015, in late June, there was an issue with the board. So at the time, the superintendent at that time was Dr. Jane Purcell. So it was a white woman. And she was the superintendent for a while during that time. Dr. Purcell was kind of not very popular at that time, especially with the board. So during that time, there was a big political fight of trying to get rid of Dr. Purcell. Dr. Purcell at the time was going to intended to file for retirement. She was planning on retiring that next year in 2016. She ended up doing what Dr. Nolte did. She ended up retiring early, not in August, but she retired in July of that year, 2015. So with a month left in school, the board had to scramble to get a interim superintendent. They ended up hiring Dr. Sandra Mickles, who was actually a superintendent of 148 years ago, but she had retired. Now, she was supposed to be the temporary superintendent while they searched for a new superintendent. Now, at the time, they had an assistant superintendent, Dr. Moore, but Dr. Moore was actually planning on retiring in 2017 or 2018, I think. So she did not want the position. I don't think they offered it to her, but even if they did, she turned it down because she didn't want to be the superintendent. So when Dr. Purcell moved on and Dr. Mickles became the interim superintendent, the policy is that the interim superintendent is just like with this one that's currently in, only supposed to work 120 days. She only worked part-time because she was retired. She was a retired educator already. And I think because of the fact that when you're retired, I think there's like only a certain amount you can make, which would affect your which would affect your retirement money. So yeah, she was a part-time superintendent. So let's fast forward to 2017. 2 years later, Dr. Mickles was still there. as the interim superintendent. Now, at the time, we had a business manager. I can't think of that guy's name, but he ended up leaving, going to Worth Township. He went to Worth Township, and this is when Dr. Nolte came in. Dr. Nolte initially came in as the business manager. He was in charge of all the finances for the district, and he worked in conjunction with the superintendent, who at that time was Dr. Sandra Mickles, who was the interim superintendent for the last 2 years at that point. So apparently the search for a superintendent was really not going anywhere with the board. So what they did was they offered Dr. Nolte the superintendent's job. Now, and this is just speculation, I think he didn't want it. However, they agreed to give him the superintendent's job, but also give him the people he needed to hire, and keep the business manager's job. So he would be working 2 jobs. He would be the superintendent and he would be the business manager. Now, mind you, business manager, and Dr. Nolte has been the business manager at different districts. And this is what in the report Regina Waldrop said. It's funny, she didn't mention his time in Lincoln Way, which he was summarily fired at that point, and he tried to file a lawsuit against Lincoln Way, but that lawsuit didn't really go anywhere. But he was fired at Lincoln Way for mismanagement. And the thing was that he was the business manager there. So I'm surprised she didn't mention anything about that. So, but she did mention his time at 152, which is Harvey, and that's another issue and another story. So Dr. Nolte was presented this offer of being in 2017, being the superintendent and also the business manager. I remember when that happened, I was thinking to myself, this is a conflict of interest. And I was telling folks, I was encouraging folks, you guys need to start coming to these board meetings, because this board is making some interesting decisions. I mean, they made some interesting decisions before and after that, but I thought that was really interesting, giving somebody 2 positions that might be a conflict of interest. Because if he's the guy who's controlling the schools and also controlling the money, that's a path that might not lead to where the district wants to be at. And sure enough, that's it. That's exactly what happens. And then given some of the interesting past that Dr. Nolte had, I was actually surprised that they actually even gave him these 2 positions. So I was encouraging people back in 2017, come to these board meetings, because they are,
I'm sorry, I didn't know. Yeah, right. You were.
So they gave him the position, and he shoots up to become the quote unquote highest paid superintendent in Illinois back then, because he was garnering 2 salaries. And they never got to the point where Dr. Nolte hired or the board never hired a business manager for the district. Now, here's where it gets very interesting. So I come back in 2019, and they end up hiring Dr. Sonia Whitaker as the deputy superintendent. Now, there's a difference between a deputy superintendent and an assistant superintendent. So the deputy superintendent is somewhat of an executive position that sits a little bit below the superintendent. However, she shares roles with the superintendent, and generally Yeah, obviously, if the superintendent is not there, then the deputy superintendent is basically in charge. But the deputy superintendent has a higher role than say an assistant superintendent. So assistant superintendent is basically an administrator who handles like, curriculum and, different departments like HR and stuff like that. But they technically don't have that same power as a deputy superintendent. Now, however, if say like for instance the superintendent is not there, or in this case the superintendent gets fired or retires, then the assistant superintendent would be able to take that position if they're willing, unlike in the case of like say Dr. Moore back in 2015. She didn't want to be the superintendent, so that's when they got the interim superintendent. So they hired Dr. Sonia Whitaker in 2019. Dr. Whitaker also has a shady past in her background. And there was a lot of things. She also actually came from 152 as well in Harvey, which that was a mess with her being there as well. What was odd about it was Dr. Nolte and Dr. Whitaker was there at the same time. But she also came through a different path because there was certain things, because I think she was a deputy superintendent at another school district in, what is that school district? But there was a lot of things that was really, really interesting. And let's just say shady. So the board hires these two people to run the entire school district. Well, COVID happens in 2020. The world shuts down, and a lot of things that we initiated, we tried to initiate from a technology perspective, got really put on hold because of the fact that we didn't know when we were going to, come back to school. So one of the initiatives that me and the team that I was on spearheaded was basically, no, let me rewind that. When I came back, the one thing that we did spearhead before COVID happened was getting every student the district being 1-to-1 for laptops. What does that mean? That means every child in that school has an access to a laptop. So when 2019 happened, District 148 became a 1-to-1 school district, which means that every school, every child in that district had access to a laptop. And then COVID happened, and it was good we implemented that, because then at that point they were able to take the laptops home and then work remotely. So at this point, when COVID hit and we were at home, when it was safe enough to at least the administrators like myself and different people in the IT department to come back, we started to implement this remote learning thing, where we would use Zoom and Microsoft Teams and Google Classrooms. So when the next school year happened, we had to bring in some teachers and also students to kind of like train them on how to use the remote technology, because the thing was that the 2020-2021 school year was completely remote. Now, during that time, as you all know, the federal government was giving COVID relief funds, or ESSER funds as they call them. The district was infused with a whole bunch of cash because of the fact that, with the COVID relief money, this would be able to give the district some footing on, on some of the things that they were kind of like missing out. So this is what they call the ESSER funds. So ESSER funds came into the district, and it basically improved the standing of the district's finances, because the district got like 13. No, I think the first round of ESSER funds, they got like $24 million. And with this money, they were able to spearhead a lot of projects, and including in this is improvements to technology, some building maintenance that needed to be done in some of the buildings, and also to buy like programs that when the district comes in, support supplemental programs and different things for the school district. So this actually helped the school district a lot. So when the ESSER funds started coming in, the district was on, it was generally on good footing. Now, here's the thing with ESSER funds and the COVID relief money. The thing about the ESSER funds or any governmental type of program that tries to infuse capital into it, it's what they call what do they call it? It's a reimbursement program. So the thing is that you have to spend the money, and when you spend the money, then you file for reimbursement. And this is general practice for any government funds that any public school district or any school gets from the government. There's a very popular and famous one called Title I funds. Title I funds are generally funds from the government that helps out with anything school related. And school districts get a certain amount of money from the federal government, and this is covered under what they call Title I funds. So the school has to spend the money, and then when they spend the money, they send the receipts to Washington or the board of the National Board of Education, and then they get that money back. There's another popular governmental program called E-Rate. E-Rate handles the technology, and particularly in poor, school districts where the population is either close to or below the poverty line. And what they do is they cover the cost of technology, but not all technology, but certain technology like the internet and the phone system and stuff like that. Same thing. It's a reimbursement program. We got to spend the money, and then you get reimbursed. This is why school districts have they have an excess of money in a reserve fund. So just in case they go over budget or they spend their money, they can go in a reserve fund. But they know they're going to get that back because the government is going to send the money back to them. Well, the COVID funds were the same thing. There was a reimbursement plan. So what they did was they spent between 2020 and maybe 2022, they spent a lot of money because they knew they was going to get that money back. They ended up buying new smart boards. They ended up implementing different programs, and then when they came back to in-class person, they also were required to purchase certain things for safety measures during COVID. We had to get we had to buy new equipment, buy those little stands where you put on the desk and the glass protection, and we had to buy what do they call it? The temperature cameras, which was actually worthless, but they gave us money for it. So the school had to implement those temperature cameras and all of this stuff came from the ESSER funds. So 2020, 2022, they started coming back. All right. So now the government decides to go with the second round of ESSER funds because we're kind of still in the pandemic. Okay. Next round of ESSER funds, I think there was a little less. I think it was like maybe $18 million or something like that. Okay. So Dr. Whitaker spearheaded this thing called flying classrooms. And here's the thing. This is not a whistleblower thing or new. You guys can go to the meeting notes at school district website, at the school district website, which is district148.net, and go into board meetings and look at the minutes. This is all public information. All public information. I encourage people to go to the website and go to Board of Education and go to the meeting minutes and read those meeting minutes, because a lot of what I'm going to say is in those minutes. So she spearheaded the purchase of Flying Classroom, which is something that was initiated by, I think his name was Barrington. I can't think of his first name, but Mr. Barrington wanted to educate, because he was a pilot and he was an aviator, and he also did repairs on airplanes. And what he did was he has this program in Florida where he wants to teach junior high and elementary school kids about the things about flying. So it's an education program that's basically remote. And the thing about Mr. Barrington was one of his students, because he initiated this program back in like 2008 or something like that. And one of the students in his program was Trayvon Martin. So Trayvon Martin was one of his first students, and that was an interesting aspect to it. And he talks about that a lot. She bought this program, and I think it costed the district about $1 million a year. And it wasn't very successful. We had got this new equipment. We had got this. We had purchased this remote, this kind of like remote access for the district. We improved the internet because there will probably be times, and there were times where we had to do remote learning or e-learning, and much of the technology issues was on their end. Many people in the district, the educators in the district who were part of the program, did not like the program, and they felt like Dr. Whitaker was wasting money. However, there were certain other things, and I'm not going to get into it right now, but I think the one thing that really got her in trouble was the Flying Classroom program. She was actually put on suspension in 2023 for a couple of weeks for something undisclosed that I still haven't figured out what it was yet. But then she came back. A lot of us thought that she was going to be gone during that time, but she ended up coming back because there were certain people on the board that basically supported her, and she came back. However, when she came back, that's when the rift started between her and Dr. Nolte. So a rift started between those two, and we started to see the board, which was kind of together, since the COVID pandemic all the way to 2024 or 2023, there started to be a rift in the board, in the board dynamics, because there were certain board members that got elected on the board. Kim Atkins, who was a longtime board member at 148, she had passed away in 2022, I think, 2021 or 2022. And she was temporarily replaced by somebody named Johnson, and I forgot her name. Real nice lady. But then when the elections came and her time was up, a new board member was elected, and it was Dr. Shalonda Randall. Now, Dr. Randall was actually a principal at one point at 148, and that's Dr. Randall on in this picture on Nolte's right, which would be his left if you're Dr. Nolte. So she became a board member, and there was a rift that happened because when Dr. Randall came in, she was an educator. She knew what the board, how a school district ran. Because the one thing about this board, and this one thing that I've always said was, more than just the requirement of just living in the district. I feel like there should be stringent requirements to be a board member. I think either you should have a child in the school district that you're running to be a board member on, or you should have some experience working at in a public school. So Dr. Randall basically kind of fulfilled that one requirement for me. And what was interesting was when she came in, she started asking the questions I'm saying in my head while I'm in the board meeting, taking care of the technology, like, why don't somebody ask this question? And sure enough, that's what she did. Now, Dr. Randall also ended up getting a lot of people on her side on the board, because at that moment you had Larry Lawrence, who was the board president at that time, who was on the far left in this picture. He was the board member. He was the board president since 2019, and he's been a longtime board member in 148. So Dr. Randall started to kind of like have a coalition of board members who were supporting her in a lot of initiatives. And then the situation happened with Dr. Whitaker. So the Flying Classroom Project started to become a failure. However, she was getting people from the board, from the school districts to promote it and, say it was wonderful. Whereas when I was talking to some of the teachers, they really hated it. The contract was up because it was a yearly renewal contract. They wanted to renew it for another $1 million. There were certain people on the board who didn't think that it was viable. It was a viable program. Well, the board voted it down. And then you started to see a bigger rift with Dr. Nolte and Dr. Whitaker, because she felt like Dr. Nolte didn't stand up for her in regards to trying to keep the program. Well, also at that same time, there were certain administrators in the school district, particularly principals and APs, who wrote a letter to Dr. Nolte stating about the situation of Dr. Whitaker. Dr. Whitaker has had several complaints lodged against her for unprofessionalism and, in some cases, misconduct. Well, in 2014, the board decided to suspend her with pay earlier that year. But before that happened, the third round of ESSER funds was coming up. And apparently, the deadline to file for the ESSER funds was, I believe it was in May of 2024. And it was like, I think it was like $13 or $14 million. Well, at that point, the district had they'd spend like well over $13-14 million. And generally they needed that money to cover a lot of the expenses that they spent in 23 and 24. However, what ended up happening was Dr. Nolte said that we can file for an extension, because I remember there was a special board meeting call and Dr. Randall was like, we need to file for the extension. We need to file for the ESSER funds now, because if we don't file it, the money won't be available. So Dr. Nolte told the board that there was an opportunity to file for an extension. Well, they didn't file, and they tried to file for the extension, and I don't think it came through. So now the district is in trouble because they didn't get that third infusion of ESSER funds that they were supposed to get. Around the same time, Dr. Whitaker is put on paid suspension. And then the board comes back wondering if they were going to still pay her $220,000 salary that she was making as a deputy superintendent. And then they decided to just basically put her on leave and not pay her in, I think it was July of that year of 2024. So Dr. Whitaker ends up filing a lawsuit against the district, which actually I think it's still pending. I believe they're probably going to be in negotiations, and there's going to be a settlement somewhere. Because Dr. Whitaker is actually working at another school district now as the curriculum coordinator, I believe. But during this time, there was a lot of turmoil. They missed the filing date. They ended up suspending letting Dr. Whitaker go officially, I think later on in 2024. Now, also during that time, Dr. Nolte files for retirement at the end of the 2025-2026 school year, which would have been this year. This would have basically been his last year as a superintendent. The board, who was basically looking for Dr. Whitaker to become the next superintendent, is now thrown into a situation where they don't have a deputy superintendent anymore because they let her go. And now Dr. Nolte is about to retire at the end of the next school year at that time, because this was the 2024-2025 school year. Now, 2025-2026 was going to be his last year. Now, based off of the history that they had before, where they had to bring back Dr. Mickles and keep her on for 2 years before they ended up getting Dr. Nolte, they didn't want to be in that position again. So what they did was they offered him a contract extension and a raise to keep him for at least another year, his final year and another year, so they can bring in a superintendent while he's here to quote unquote train the superintendent, of 148 stuff. Well, there were board members in the Dr. Randall camp who was looking to kind of move Dr. Nolte out of his position sooner than later. And in the last election, several people from the Larry Lawrence camp, well, not several people, but just one person was elected out of their board position. And then there was one person who flipped on him. And what ended up happening was the board dynamics ends up changing in May, because with the new board, there was a new board member and another board member who flipped. Dr. Shalana Randall becomes the new president of the board in May, and she has the majority of the board on her side. So this is where Dr. Nolte's claim of racial discrimination comes in, because ever since that point, Dr. Nolte felt like the board, not all of the board, but the part of Dr. Randall's board has been kind of like putting pressure on him, and he claims harassment that, they're kind of trying to force him out. So there was a lot of speculation, a lot of back and forth between the board president and the superintendent. And this is what it leads up to, because Dr. Randall and several other board members have been accusing Dr. Nolte of lying to them about the finances. Because as I just stated before, we were told that we were able to file an extension for the third round of ESSER funds, but that never came to fruition. And then they put the board in financial watch. So many members of the board just kind of turned against Dr. Nolte. And there was one person who was a huge supporter of Dr. Nolte, ended up going on to the side of Dr. Randall. And I thought that was very ironic for him to basically accuse him of lying when back in those, back 2-3 years ago, you were a staunch supporter of his. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But you're not going to get this with Regina Waldrop because she doesn't know this stuff. She doesn't know any of this stuff. And she would know it if she had her crack investigators look at the board minutes. Because like I said, a lot of this stuff is stuff that you could just see on the board minutes. Now, whether she steals this information, I really don't care. All right. Because like I said, this is not stolen information. This is actually all public. I haven't even told you the stuff that I know. Because first of all, I don't want to get into any legal ramifications, because just so you know, because I also assisted the FOIA officers for information. There were certain things that I particularly know that is confidential, that if I released it out to the public, it would do a lot of damage to board members in 148 and 148 school districts. So I'm not going to release that anytime soon, unless they threaten to sue me. But but there's a lot of information that I know that I'm not releasing. But what I'm telling you now is all public information. So this is it's an interesting situation where, like I said, if people were coming to the board meetings when I asked them to come to the board meetings, we wouldn't be at this point. We wouldn't be at this juncture. If the picture of that board meeting where they had practically the district office full of people who, now that Tiffany is gone, they got to just find another cause. If they were coming to the board meetings in 2017 when I asked them to, this would not have happened. This would not have happened. And I would give credit to one person, because of the fact that I was in charge of the technology for the board for like the last 7 years. There was one person I would give credit to that was not a district employee or anything like that. She was just a plain resident. And the one person that I saw constantly at board meetings was Miss Felita Creighton. She was always there. She's the only one that I know that has been always there. And if there were more Felita Creightons at these meetings, we probably would not have gotten to this point. So that is my perspective of that. Do you have any questions?
I do. And thank you for sharing that with us, Gardis. And thank you for letting us know where to go to get the board meeting minutes, because that is something that's important. No one goes to the school board meetings, library board meetings, or the park district meetings. So it's a lot of things going on that we just don't know about. I do have a question. Since we're looking at, since Dr. Nolte, this was the day where everyone wanted to stop him from getting a raise and talk about it. Have you seen the board meetings since that day be this crowded? From your observation, when you can make it?
Yeah, I mean, that next board meeting, because remember, this was a special board meeting. And so I think the next scheduled board meeting, there was a huge crowd. And I think the next 2 board meetings, there was a huge crowd. But then after that, people stopped coming.
And I probably have, this might be kind of, forgive me, but much like what's going on right now, we were saying like Dr. Nolte's making hundreds of $1,000s, then the deputy superintendent's making hundreds of thousands of dollars. When Dr. Nolte resigned, what is the follow-up to look into his? I'm trying to figure out how would that help the taxpayers here in Dolton and Riverdale. The money has been spent. He has the money. Do I think he should have been making that much money and the school was failing? No, but that's my opinion. But what digging, they're still trying to dig for, I heard Regina said they're digging, and I'm wondering what are we digging for, because he retired and we went to 3 different school districts, and just to go off the news report, if he ruined 3 different school districts, why no one looked into it before? I'm just wondering what's the passion for it. I guess that's just me talking out loud.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is that he's going to get his pension. Apparently, there's been kind of like they were going to attempt to kind of hold his pension to do quote unquote some investigation. I don't know what, but it was recently announced at the board meeting on Tuesday that he was going to get his pension, which is just a lot of money. But like I was saying earlier, I'm not sure what investigations was going on with the past of Dr. Nolte, because like I said, he made the news when he was at Lincoln Way. He made the news when he was at Harvey. And these are articles that you can easily, what? I'm starting to think that there's been a scrubbing of a lot of his information, because when you look up Dr. Nolte's stuff, I don't see the articles that I used to see anymore from Lincoln Way, and I do still see the court documents, so the court papers from the Lincoln Way suit that he tried to file against them, and it got thrown out. But there was a lot of controversy that followed Dr. Nolte, and I remember even back then when I Googled his name, I saw a lot of red flags, and I was wondering, like, wow, they made him the business manager, and I'm not sure, what were they looking at? And the same thing with Dr. Whitaker. I was actually surprised they had hired her, with the shady past that has gone on, in her professional career. And let me just say, like I said, the Dr. Whitaker firing, and like I said, I'm not going to disclose information that is not public, but the Dr. Whitaker firing was legitimate. It was definitely legitimate.
That's interesting. But the taxpayers will still have to possibly pay us a settlement.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think I get a little frustrated about all of this stuff. Like, a lot of things go on, and I have to say allegedly, because this was in after Lori Lightfoot left, when Lacey left, pension. Like, it's like we just get rid of people and then replace other people with money. You know what I mean? With the same amount of money, nothing gets resolved. Like you said, they both were in Harvey. I wonder if they were there during the chicken wing fiasco. But
no, I don't think so.
But this is very interesting. Like, I think that Dolton is just somewhere where a lot of people can go and get a lot of money. I know that sounds crazy, but it's a lot of 6-figure jobs here in Dolton that it's just, it's too much.
Yeah. So there's some fundamental issues that I think there needs to be an examination of. There needs to be an examination of how one can improve not just the school district, but the area in the school district, because I think that's the main problem of why the school districts continue to fail. So bringing in, like putting a lot of money into it is not going to help, because for one, that money basically goes into a whirlpool and just basically kind of sinks into a hole where nobody knows where it's at. Obviously, I just narrated to you the last 10 years of it, and we saw millions of dollars of government funds, even though it was spent in some ways properly was still kind of like wasted, and now we can't even get the last of the ESSER funds in, and this is what puts the district into a hole. So I think the money part of it would fail. Like, even if they gave District 148 $1 trillion, I don't think the scores would improve at all, because of the fact that, it comes down to the community. It comes down to the people that support the community. There's a lot of issues with the residents, both in Dolton and Riverdale, that 148 still hasn't resolved in regards to the level of education that our children are getting. We also starting to see a decline in the student population in 148. When I came in to the district in 2015, there was roughly over 300. There was roughly over 3,000, about 3,200 students in the district in total, with 10 schools. That's a nice size student population for 10 schools. When I left in a couple of months ago, or let's say over a month ago, it looked like the student population went down by 1,000. I think there was like 2,200 students in the district. And so, why is this? How did the school decline in 10 years from 1,000 students? And a lot of it is many families are leaving the area. There are other schools that are opening up, that they're putting their children into, like, charter schools and some private schools that are in the area, like Calvin and the other Christian academy that I think is in South Holland. They're going for the options. And but I think mainly it's just families are just kind of like moving away. So there was an uptick in student population over the last 2 years because of the fact that we had a lot of immigrant children coming in. But now that ICE is coming in, snatching up, families and children, we saw that decrease, because now children are, parents are scared to bring their children to school now. So now the population of children have gone down again. So that is an issue that needs to be resolved. There are schools in the district that are well over 120 years old. Franklin is that school. Franklin, which is on Martin Luther King Drive, the oldest building in 148. It was built in like 1910 or something like that. And I think the youngest school is Lincoln, and that had to be rebuilt because they rebuilt that school maybe about 20, 25, 26 years ago. So a lot of the buildings, the maintenance part of it is just, there have been several classrooms in Franklin that had to be condemned, and they couldn't put students in there. So that's a huge problem. And, along with the politics that goes on with, District 148, and I haven't even told you, I'm just talking about the politics that just deals with, the finances and administration. I'm not even talking about the dynamics of the board members between each other, because I remember a board meeting that I was at a couple of years ago. There was a male board member who is going to get up and fight a female board member.
What?
Yes. So when this male charged the female board member, because I was sitting close to the female board member, me and the attorney, his name was Miller, had to get up and shove him down because we thought that he was going to literally hit her. And so I had to get up and basically push him back and say, "Hey, we don't need this." And there were, we have security there, but they were standing by the door, and they probably wouldn't have gotten to them in time. But yeah, so when that male board member tried to get up, me and the attorney who was sitting right next to each other, we got up and basically had to push him back for trying to charge at a female board member. He was suspended for a couple of meetings because of that. So those dynamics, and from my understanding, even before that time, there were almost all physical altercations at these board meetings with some of the same board members. So that's also in disarray. So there's a lot of fundamental issues that need to be resolved on a basic level, and it does start with the leadership and proper leadership that would not only encourage but inspire the educators and the administrators in that district to have everybody take their job seriously, and basically kind of implement some sort of structure that helps them out. Because listen, I've seen some good principals there, but then there was this one principal who was just, oh my God, his school was so much in disarray that the teachers didn't want to go there. They filed complaints whenever they were transferred there, and this guy really didn't even care. And so towards the end of the school year, the board had to literally fire him. The board had to fire him, not the superintendent. The board had to fire him because he got so many complaints from not just the teachers, but the parents as well, because the parents was fed up with him, and they had to fire him. And it starts at the top.
I agree. Man, it's some juicy stories coming out of Dolton, Riverdale. I remember we were hearing about the old school ZAP office and what was going on over there. So this is just interesting. It's so sad that adults act like this, and I believe it does start at the top. It starts at the top. So I wonder, what do you think? What's in store for 148? Now we have an interim superintendent. Dr. Nolte is gone. Did they ever fill a Dr. Whitaker spot with the deputy superintendent?
No.
So that's a little savings there, I think. I would say, maybe.
No, yeah, I mean, trust me, you save money, but the thing is that now who's in charge of curriculum?
Right. What about the kids? Like, do they even get into really discussions about what the children need? What's going on with the kids?
Well, I will say this: primarily, board meetings are typically just straight business aspects of the district.
Mm-hmm.
However, there are discussions about the type of education, level of education on a legal level that would concern the school district in regards to what they can do or what they cannot do. Now, sometimes too, they have these presentations where they're giving the children the awards, or the team did good downstate or whatever, and they would have these presentations at the board meetings during that time. But most of the time, it is about business, and it's about what's being spent and what type of programs that they're implementing, or educational programs that has to be implemented. But also to reports from the different departments, like the special ed department, and support, student support, technology, maintenance. So all those reports are also logged into the meeting minutes as well.
Wow. Well, Gardis, this is interesting. I wonder if they will. Is this ever heard of? Maybe the interim superintendent possibly could just move over to full time and take Dr. Nolte's spot. And is this interim superintendent, if you could say, are they taking both positions like he had? I wonder.
So that's the question that I have, because they don't have a business manager. She's not going to be the new superintendent because she's retired. She actually was a superintendent at, I think, in Hazel Crest, I think. And she was there for like a long time, but she's retired. She's a retired educator, and she would not qualify for being a full-time superintendent, just from that perspective.
Well, I guess we'll keep our eyes open. District 148. I guess Regina could take some of the tips, like maybe going to the researching from the board meetings and maybe speaking for the board, because I think that on the surface, not to say she hasn't, I'm not saying that, but I think on the surface, it just may be someone telling her, or the rumor mill where she actually has all the facts in District 148 minutes.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Just kind of start from there, just start from just looking at the board minutes and looking at, and if she needs to talk to people, she can talk to, certain people. I guess would I talk to her? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. She'll probably ask me some stuff that I'm not even actually supposed to say, but
Yeah,
like
it
I
could
said,
be tricky with media. Totally tricky.
it could be very tricky with them, because like I said, just like I disclosed with you and your audience, there's a lot of stuff that I haven't told you that I'm not going to say anything about, because that's something that's not out in the public.
Look, I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
If you knew what I knew, you would be like, "Ooh, juicy."
You know me. I sure would. I'll be like, now this is juicy. This better than the chicken wing drama.
Yes, let me tell you something. There's some stuff that I know that's way better than the chicken wing drama. So
doing time for chicken wings is diabolical. That's something else. Well, thank you, Gardis, so much.
All righty then.
You have a great night.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. So Gardis Watts gave us a little history of what was going on in the district. Also, I mean, it's in the meeting minutes. When we were covering Thornton Township, I was telling you guys, if you go back to 2021, go look at those meeting minutes. They are juicy. That's what we found out about Eagle Creek and the vacations and the times they were having up there. They were having a good old time. They was charging manicures to the taxpayers, but nobody want to see that. It's always about Tiffany. Even with this story with Dolton, we start with Tiffany, and she has nothing to do with the district. Dang it, I let Gardis go, and I should have asked him about how he felt about that. But we'll ask him later. You guys enjoy your Saturday night. I'll see you soon. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank y'all for just listening in. Small, intimate crowd, and I appreciate every moment of it. Till next time, bye.